The Suicide Squad in New Zealand was a so-nicknamed group of New Zealand Legislative Councillors, appointed in 1950 by Prime Minister Sidney Holland, tasked with voting the New Zealand Legislative Council out of existence. Abolition of the upper house. By the middle of the 20th century, the New Zealand Legislative Council was increasingly being looked on as ineffectual and making little difference to the legislative process. The Legislative Council rarely criticised bills sent to it by the House, and many believed that it was now obsolete. Some favoured its reform, while others favoured its abolition, like the leader of the National Party, Sidney Holland, who introduced a private member's bill to abolish it in 1947. However, because the Parliament of New Zealand was unable to amend the New Zealand Constitution Act 1852, because it was an act of the United Kingdom Parliament, and the New Zealand Parliament was barred from amending the parts of the Act dealing with the establishment of the Legislative Council, it had to first adopt the Statute of Westminster 1931, which it did with the Statute of Westminster Adoption Act 1947. Following the adoption of the Act, the Parliament of New Zealand passed the New Zealand Constitution Amendment, Request and Consent, Act 1947, and the Parliament of the United Kingdom passed the New Zealand Constitution Amendment Act 1947, allowing the New Zealand Parliament to amend the Constitution Act and abolish the Legislative Council. However, the Labour government did not actually enact the abolition itself. Losing office in the 1949 general election, National formed the new government under party leader Sidney Holland. A key aide to Holland was Clifton Webb, who was appointed to Attorney General. As Minister of Justice, Webb was responsible for drafting the legislation, the Legislative Council Abolition Act, that resulted in the abolition of the Legislative Council. As 19 of the existing 25 members of the council were known to be opposed to the bill, Holland appointed 25 new members, known as the Suicide Squad, to vote for their own abolition, just as the Australian state of Queensland had done to abolish its upper house in 1922. They were appointed on the 22nd of June 1950. With 4 more members appointed on the 27th of July 1950, to encourage cooperation from other members. Holland also promised to use the money saved through abolition to set up a fund for retired members. A statutes revision committee, now defunct, was established to carry out some of the scrutiny that the Legislative Council had been intended for. Although abolition was intended as an interim measure, no serious attempts were made to introduce a new second chamber, and Parliament has been unicameral since. Members of the Suicide Squad. Most members were appointed on the 22nd of June 1950, although William Paulson was appointed the 15th of March 1950 and Alan Bell, Croker, and Maru Maru were appointed the 27th of July 1950. Thomas Otto Bishop was first appointed on the 9th of March 1943 and after the expiry of his 7-year term, was reappointed on the 15th of March 1950. He was thus not part of the intake of new members. All their terms lasted to the 31st of December 1950. Andrew Henson Allen, 1877 to 1963. John Southgate Allen, 1883 to 1955, appointed the 27th of July 1950. Leonard Allen Alexander, 1904 to 1968. Cheviot Wellington Rangi Dillon Bell, 1892 to 1963, appointed the 27th of July 1950. Cora Louisa Burrell Mrs. 1889 to 1962. Alan Richmond Cockerell, 1891 to 1975. Cyril Henry Croker, 1888 to 1958. Appointed the 27th of July 1950. Harold Dickey, 1874 to 1954. Bill N. Dean, 1884–1957. John Alexander Finlayson, 1890–1960. William Girling, 1882–1973. Ethel Marion Gould Mrs. 1895–1992. Edwin Henry Staples Hamilton, 1885–1964. Francis Patrick Kelly, 1883–1977. Henry Livingston, 1890–1959. Garnet Hercules Mackley, 1883–1986. Bruce MacLeod, 1890–1966. Robert Thomas Macmillan, 1887–1962. Hoero Maru, 1890–1952. Appointed 27 July 1950. Ossie Mazengarb, 1890–1963. David Murdoch, No BD Years. Apirana Nata, 1874–1950. Died before taking seat. Replaced by Maru. Alexander Patterson O'Shea, 1902–1990. Hillcoat Pitts Brown, 1905–1990. William Paulson, 1875–1960. Appointed 15 March 1950. Neil Aylmer Rattray, 1896–1964. James Frederick Thompson, 1884–1966. Agnes Louisa Weston, 1879–1972. Charles Gilbert White, 1880–1966. William Young, No BD Years. Abolition of the New Zealand Legislative Council in the 1966 Encyclopedia of New Zealand.